I don't know if Dr. Keenan's on yet.
Oh, okay. Will we wait a few minutes?
I'm here.
You're
there?
there?
Okay. Is our secretary here?
Yes, he is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
It is now 7 o'clock, so we will call the meeting to order. I'm going to ask if you're not speaking, if you would mute, because I hear some background noise. Thank you. I will ask for a roll call vote. Well, first of all, I'm sorry, if we can recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Before we do the roll call vote, it's with sadness that I let you know that our current president, Keisha Lee, lost her father this afternoon. So before we do the roll call vote, if we could just take a moment of silence and remembrance of her and her family. Thank you. We will now have our roll call vote to see if we have a quorum.
Thank you. Please make sure you state your name once I call your district. Afton.
Kenny Edgar.
Thank you. Bayless.
Shannon Kohler.
Thank you. Brentwood.
Ryan Flynn, Brentwood.
Thank you. Clayton.
Chris Wynn.
Ferguson Florson, Kevin Martin. Hancock Place.
Garrett Meese.
Thank you. Hazelwood.
Kevin Langley.
Thank you. Jennings. Jennings. Kirkwood.
Chad Kavanaugh here.
Thank you. Ladue. I think that's Keisha. Ladue. Lindbergh.
Jennifer Miller.
Thank you. Maplewood Richmond Heights.
Linda Robinson.
Thank you. Melville.
Patrick Gilby.
Thank you. Normandy. Normandy. Okay. Parkway.
Debbie Hopper.
Thank you. Pattonville. Pattonville. Rittner.
Jennifer
Rittner.
Lonis.
Thank you. Riverview Gardens.
Veronica Morrow Real.
Thank you. Rockwood.
Lynn McGett.
Thank you. University City.
Joanne Suda.
Thank you. Valley Park. Valley Park. Webster Groves.
Tara Shear.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Confirmed.
Okay. If you can share the agenda with me, Rita. Okay. Now that we've established that we have a quorum, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Afton.
May I have a second?
Second, University Center.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move to item 3, the approval of the minutes from December 5th of 22.
Can we call approval?
Oh, I'm
agenda?
sorry. Yes,
Okay.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yay or nay?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Agenda.
Yes. Yes, for the agenda. That's what I was going to say. Approval of the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
May we now have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Debbie
So
Hopper.
moved, Lindbergh. Or second, Lindbergh.
All right. Are there any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 I forgot to ask, are there any opposers? Thank you. We will now go to item number 4, public speakers. Rita, do we have any people that wish to speak before the board?
None were submitted.
Thank you. We will now move to item 5, which is the Parent Advisory Council.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. We would like to bring to you the Governing Council, our report for our March 6th meeting. Next slide, please. We'd like to present to you our 2022-2023 PAC Executive Committee. Myself, Dr. Kamisha Carter, President, Rob Eden, Vice President, Melissa Upchurch, Recording Secretary, Denise Bursey, Correspondence Secretary, and Latricia Clark, Educational Specialist, Parliamentarian. And if they are on here, just wave your hand. We'd like to discuss further of our PAC programming. Next slide, please. Currently, the SSD PAC Executive Committee sent a survey to the partnering district superintendent and board president following our initial contacts about our focus areas for this year. Next slide. Our 4 focus areas are parent voice, equity and spacing, compliance, equity and understanding the IEP SPED process. The reason why we are going through these 4 focus areas, as we stated earlier when we made our initial contact, some of us made contact with superintendents and some of us didn't because of business, the beginning of the school year, and those type of answers for that particular type of reason. We're going through this because these are our parents' concerns when it comes to children who have special educational needs. Next slide, please. We are asking that district leaders complete the survey by March the 31st. We will provide our data to the Governing Council in June 2023. Here's the thing. We're also sending out a survey to the PAC parents, asking them to complete the same survey, only just geared to parents with the exact same agenda items and the exact same agenda questions. Do you see things happening in the district with the partnering districts that you expect to see? We will provide the correlations and the quantitative information and the trends that we see with the information that we get. Any questions? Next slide. Oh, I got some. We're excited about our current collaboration with Dr. Keenan and her team of administrators. We have fostered a great relationship between the two. So kudos. I just want to say thank you, Dr. Keenan and your team, for working with us this year and making sure that we are getting what we need for parents. Kudos. Next slide. Any questions?
May I ask a question? This is Debbie Hopper, Parkway.
Absolutely.
Hi, Ms. Carter, Dr. Carter.
Hi, Dr. Carter, yeah.
On the bullet point about equity and understanding the IEP SPED process, whose understanding are you seeking?
As the superintendent is over the lead of the schools, he or she must know what's going on in each and every one of his or her schools. So does the principal know the IEP SPED process? Does the assistant principal? Does the district liaison? Because what we're finding is that most of our SPED kids are getting suspended at alarming rates, at alarming times, which then means that they're outside of their, I can't even think, not manifestation, they're outside of their number of times that they can be suspended without reconvening the IEP. Oftentimes, parents don't know their children are suspended, or i.e. the case manager is telling the parent that they are suspended. There's no records or there's no documentation showing that the child has been suspended. So that's very illegal to send a child home. And there's no documentation that they are being suspended, but they're being sent home because of behaviors. So SSD on last month in our in our February meeting, they showed us how to request a BIP. That's a building improvement plan. And they went through every step on showing us how to go about getting a building improvement plan and have all the stakeholders at play. Here's the thing, Ms. Hopper, that disturbs me the most. It's not just one socioeconomic level. It's happening across the board, and it's happening in all 22 districts, whether you, the board person, knows it or not. I had a conversation with one of the board members in one of the districts because there were some concerns about the questionnaire, because she said when she goes in, I guess it's a different level because she's a board president. But what about the parent who cannot articulate correctly? What about the parent who has been banned from school because he or she sends their kid to school to get service by the district, the partnering district, and he or she is, because they're frustrated and they're on this level because the school district, not SSD, the partnering district, is supposed to be the leader, and they also supposed to have the answer along with SSD to help their child. So now they're considered belligerent, but they're just trying to get their point across. We are dealing with so many inequities, dealing with the partner district. And so here's the thing that we are asking. We are asking that you dive deep and do a deeper dive than what you are currently doing, and look at your policies, look at your procedures, look at what's going on, because SSD can only go so far because our children are part of your district first. Then there are students, they receive services from SSD. So as parents of SSD, we're holding the charge for the partnering districts to do what they are supposed to do by our children, because we pay tax dollars into your district first. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
I have a follow-up question.
Absolutely.
Can you tell a little bit about equity and spacing? Can you talk a little bit?
There have been times where parents come and say, well, they closed our classroom down because they need a space for a reading teacher, or they need the space for a new classroom because they have getting more children. So not unbeknownst sometimes to SSD that they have consolidated special education room, saying that that is their least restrictive environment, which is not so. So parents have to go first to SSD and say, why y'all do the room? We said we don't have control over what room assignments are because we're SSD, we're not in the building. So it leads us to go to the partnering district. And so going to the partnering district, those questions that, well, we need spacing. Well, we need this. Well, that's not, you need to talk to building and maintenance, or you need to talk to the superintendent. And at every turn, they are getting turned away, which is unfortunate, which leads to letters, which leads to saying, well, I'm not being paid attention. What is my next step? So when parents get the blind eye, then they come to me. Then I have to go to whatever steps I need to take in order to make sure that those things are happening. But then parents get the bad rep of being a bully, but they have to make sure that their child is getting what they're needing. Some classrooms do not need to be combined. It's just a part of it. If we all go back to that equity photo that we've all seen, where everybody's looking over the post, over the fence, looking at the baseball game, and everybody is on a different stoop. Oftentimes, when it comes to children who are differently able and who have different needs, never get on the stoop. So, hence, we have to go back to the partnering district, talk to the superintendent, talk to the building facilities person, and ask them, why did you close the room?
And Dr. Carter, this is Dr. Macklin here. I would interject. Good evening. How you doing, ma'am?
Hi, how are you?
Great. I would interject and say that when we talk about that image here as it relates to the 3 students who were on the fence, and somebody knows where I'm going with this, but those 3 students who are on the different size stools looking over the fence, I would say that when we really truly talk about eliminate systemic barriers for all students, what needs to be eliminated is the fence. The fence is the barrier. And so until we eliminate that fence, those systemic issues stay.
And I thank you for that comment, but that's not what I was talking about. Our children are not even close to the fence to get on the stump, to even look over a fence, which the fence is there for all children. So basically what I'm saying as a parent, that we can't even get to the fence to get on the stump because we have other barriers with the partnering district, not SSD, because we're working those out, but with the partnering districts not accommodating for our children.
Correct, 100%.
Thank you, sir.
100%.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
The question that I wanted to ask is if there is a particular district that you seem to be having revolving concerns or problems with, maybe then that can be shared with the SSD rep that's on the governing council so we can get that addressed. Because I hear what you're saying, but I don't know, I can go back and I'm making notes in this because as a person who basically served with the SSD PAC for many, many years, it is concerning to me. But if it's something that I need to address specifically, well, you already got me going to do some walkthroughs. Just come up to the district and say, I'm going to go do some walkthroughs, or somebody come with me, I'm going to do some walkthroughs, I'm going to do that. But I just want to know if there's some particular districts that you can let the SSD governing council member know or talk to about it so that we can address. You don't have to give names or whatever, but maybe those things that you see as problems.
Yes, ma'am. Right now, the number 1 district is Ferguson Florissant. That's on the top of the list. Then we have Hazelwood. I got a letter today from a parent in Hazelwood. Then we'll go down the line. We have no representation or people really talking to in Kirkwood. We have Kirkwood, number 3. And number 4, we have Parkway. Those are the top 4 that always come across my desk.
Okay. So what we can do, Dr. Carter, is we can work through those situations and, like Ms. Morrow-Rio said, we can look at those districts, but not all schools are the same in each one of those districts. So there's like over 30 schools in Ferg Flora. So what we can do is we can work with you, we can work with those schools that are identified, and then we can absolutely address those issues that are coming up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, I was just going to comment because sometimes parents don't know to, I don't know if it's that they're, and I'm not trying to belittle this at any point, but sometimes parents don't know that the school board, even though we have someone on SSD, that we still represent those babies. So,
yes,
so that may be a concern too. I was just wondering,
I will say this. As a parent who feels that you guys are the SSD and the partnering districts are the expert, sometimes they're intimidated and to meet the need. If that's what I'm trying to say, I think that is what I'm trying to say. They're intimidated to even ask for help. Schools identify. And then from there, we go from there. And most parents sometimes get to the IEP meeting and get so utterly afraid that they don't even sign the paperwork.
Okay.
But then on the flip side of that, my baby is now receiving services from SSD in this partnering district. And I'm not getting what I need. I'd rather keep my child at home than to send my child to school, because I know as soon as my child goes to school, they're going to suspend them.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So we have those kinds of issues. And like Dr. Keenan said, I am open to talk about any other incidents and bring the parent up as well, because I am only a liaison to speak for the parents.
I understand.
So I am open. Not on Saturdays, but I got you Monday through Friday.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Dr.
Uh,
Carter, this is Dr. Macklin again. Just one more time, I promise you, and then I won't add any questions. I appreciate your effort and your hard work here. Just talk a little bit about, you were talking about your expertise just as it relates to the parent not having a voice, really not feeling like they have a voice. Just talk a little bit more about that.
Actually, parent voice is the first focus area that we have. Oftentimes, parents and our parents, students who receive SSD are not asked to the table when bond issues come for building, getting new facilities. We're not asked to the table specifically when the plans are being drawn. Case in point, we were talking to a parent and they have ADA specifications, but when the child is trying to go through the door with the wheelchair, that particular child in this particular district cannot get through the door with her wheelchair because the door is not big enough. How could that have been made differently? Well, here's the thing: bring parents like that to the table. We forget about our students who are mute. We forget about our students who are deaf. We forget about our students who are blind. We forget about our students who have orthotics, which means that they have to go upstairs. If the building doesn't have an elevator, how are they going to get up the stairs with orthotics? Those are the questions that need to be brought to the table when you guys are making decisions about new building improvements or even building new schools. But what happens is, you get students and you get parents, but you don't get our parents, the children who are differently able.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Yes, sir. And I think that concludes my report. Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Did anyone have an additional questions for her?
Garrett Meese with Hancock Place. I'm just curious to know throughout all the different districts. I know she said that everything was pretty much the same throughout each district. There's issues on each district, relatively in a fair scale. My question is, are the allocations of SSD being equally equitably distributed throughout all the districts based on their needs versus the tax base? Because I know a lot of districts, may in different districts may actually require more services, but in other districts may require less services just based on if there's a district that's in more of a need, are we addressing that? And how is that being dealt with from an equity standpoint for the, I know that, we've got students that are being suspended and kicked out of school, but some of that, my understanding is it comes from the lack of resources being allocated to that district to be able to have interventions in place for those students.
Mr. Mees, that is above my pay grade. I think allocation of resources and things of that nature has to be answered by either Dr. Keenan, Dr. Wendy Pendergrass, or Dr. McReal Moore. Dr. Moore. That's above my head. I don't deal with allocation of resources.
And good evening, everyone. That is the direction that we'll be going into to respond to that question as we present the budget tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, Rita, you could put the agenda back up, please.
Thank you, Madam President.
Not a problem. Thank you. We will now move to item number 6, which is the superintendent's report.
Okay, we have on our agenda tonight are the preliminary budget. Typically, what we do every year at this time, or the last several years, we've been presenting to the Governing Council to present all of the work that we've been doing over the last several months on making sure that we're building our budget and being able to support our students and our staff in the partner districts and in our SSD schools. This budget process starts in October. And so we've been having over 150 hours of meetings on these, building this budget. We met with all of the superintendents and their cabinet in January, and I'm working backwards. We met with all the directors in December. We met with each one of the partner districts and the principals in November and December. And so with that, it's really making sure we're being thoughtful, that we're considering all of the needs of each district, but having the parameters around what constitute an additional staff member. And so our team has put together kind of the history and the story about what we looked at. And so that it'll explain all the allocations that we're looking at for the budget to be preliminary approved. What this means is it'll allow us to be able to open positions and start to hire those hard to fill positions like teachers and like our related service providers, like school psychologists, speech language pathologists, our occupational therapists. Those are the positions that we really want to focus in on from now and until the end of this school year, which ends in June. We typically will do our hiring for our paraprofessionals and our RBTs in the summer, which in July and August, because those are hourly positions. So, but we'll continue to recruit for them regardless, but that's the bulk of where we get them hired. So I'd like to turn it over to our team. And so Dr. Hogg will start it out and kind of walk everybody through our process that we have been going through for the last several months.
Thank you, Dr. Keenan. Good evening, Governing Council. My name is Jeff Hogg. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Special School District. This evening, Cabinet members and myself will walk through the preliminary budget. As Dr. Keenan mentioned, the preliminary budget at this point is more about approving the potential full-time employee additions. As we know, the numbers will change as we get through the spring. So we'll just move right into this. Next slide, please, Rita. As you can see on the screen in front of you, our mission for a special school district to support and empower students of all learning abilities to excel to their greatest potential. And the vision, all students realize their full potential in life and learning. Next slide, please. And we wanted to back that up with the three values: equity, commitment, and collaboration. And you can see those definitions on the screen there. Next slide, please. The reason we had those first two slides is we wanted to show how the budget goals fit into our district goals. The first goal that we have and that we've talked about numerous times throughout the year is equity. The second one is staffing. We will always provide staffing to meet our students' needs. Curricular support will always provide best practices and the best curriculum for our students. And then fourth, we will always make sure that our facilities are safe and secure and educationally welcoming for our staff and students. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hogg. Enrollment trends. So what we are finding, next slide, please. So what we're finding across the district that our enrollment continues to decrease. As long as, if you see on the first slide, that is SSD with the students that are qualifying for services. And then the bottom graph is the county numbers. Next slide. Special education service by the years we broke down. Although our numbers are decreasing in the amount of students that might be qualifying for special education services, our minutes, however, are going up on a continual basis. And this graph shows the minutes by the years and the increase that we have had. Next slide.
And so this brings us back to the major revenue assumptions. Next year, 2023 is a reassessment year. Historical numbers for special school district have seen revenues increase $7 to $9 million during a reassessment year in local revenue. When we talk about local revenue, we're talking about local tax revenue there. We get guidance from DESE every spring. We haven't really gotten too much of that yet because DESE relies on the legislature to direct that. Transportation, as we know and has been stated, they are planning to fully fund that for next year. And then there's discussion on the student adequacy target. Student adequacy target is a number that fits into the foundation formula and really drives per pupil revenue from DESE in that formula. Investment earnings, we are up quite a bit this year on our current investment. That is because last spring at this time, investments were in the 0.4 range, and now we're receiving 4.4% return on our investment. So our current year is up quite a bit. We project to be up anywhere between $8 to $10 million at the end of the year, and we expect that to continue for next year. So we'll probably put our investment earnings in that $8 to $10 million range for next year. Medicaid revenues will remain near the 11 to 13 million as received this year. That will grow a little bit as we continue to identify different areas for reimbursement. Next slide, please. And so you'll see on the screen revenue by source. You'll see in the very left-hand gray column there, you'll see local, county, state, and federal. Those are the four main sources. And then contracted and other is our fifth. That's tuition from partner districts in there. So you'll see over in the second column from the right, you'll see our budget for this year. We've received, or we plan on receiving $324 million in that range. We have increased that money as we've received more taxes than what we thought. So when we set the budget last year, we did not know where CPI, which is inflation, would fall. We didn't know the personal property would come in as high as it would, and we didn't know that weren't able to project that the personal property would come in. But then also with cash in the economy right now, we are seeing an influx of prior year's taxes being paid. So when we look at the 324 million to the 339, we're going to take into consideration that the 324 will be higher towards the end of this year. And we're looking at 339 million for next year in local. County always stays about the same. That's fines and forfeitures. And then with state, we're looking to increase that a little bit, federal a little bit. Federal is our Part B and Medicaid money that I talked about. And then like I said, contracted others, that'll stay about the same. So we're projecting about 527 million in revenue next year. That could fluctuate up or down depending on guidance as we get further throughout the spring. Next slide, please. And so some expenditures that are coming up, key expenditure assumptions, our negotiations have begun. Mr. Boyd has done a good job getting those up and running. And then so depending on where those land, that will change what our projected expenditures are for next year. Benefits, which is insurance, medical, dental, and then retirement. We're projecting a medical increase of 3 to 4% right now. Could go up a little bit as we get further into the spring, but we'll keep you informed of that. And then disproportionality, our tier 2 and our high needs district, tier 3, we continue to have that plan for 2023 and then 2024. And what that will do is the disproportionality, Ms. Moore will talk here in a second, but we'll have to spend about $6.1 million from our Part B on early intervention services. Next slide, please. And so you'll see expenditures there, left-hand column, the gray column. You have two types of salaries, certified salaries and non-certified. And then you have benefits, which I just mentioned. You have purchase services, which is training. And then you have supplies, which is supplies. Capital outlay is buildings. We broke ground in the fall on a new central garage. It is at the northeast corner of 70 and 170. It's projected to be finished by December or January of next year. And we'll move into that in the spring. So that's part of the capital outlay, but that's planned for. And so we'll be able to absorb that cost with just our funds from Fund 4 there. So you'll see in the far right column, and these are just incremental increases. They don't truly reflect what could possibly take place with negotiations. So these will change as we finish with negotiations. As you can see, there's a slight increase in certified salaries. We expect that to go up. There's an increase in non-certified salaries. And as we bring different things forward, that could change. So you'll see a total increase in salaries. You'll see an increase in benefits. We know that will go up. That's right now at about 2.5% on this slide. So that could go as high as 3 or 4, as I was mentioning. Purchase services, we show a slight increase, supplies a slight increase, and then capital outlay a slight decrease. So we're looking at about 526 million right now in expenditures. As I mentioned, we fully expect that number to go up as we continue through and wrap up negotiations. Next slide, please.
So when we talk about here really are tier one, tier two, tier three, there was a question here. Are we ensuring that those districts who to ensure what they need to get what they need? So we talk about really delving into what those pieces mean as tier one, tier two, and tier three, but also want to focus here really as we talk about what the meaning and delve into the meaning of historically underserved is. Because when we look at these districts here, they really delve into that category. Historically underserved was really established, and that term was defined really by four key factors. Those Americans who at the time had limited income, lived in rural communities, which is about access and opportunity, and of course also have low income socioeconomic status, which we still see that today. And then also members of racial or ethnic minorities. And so those pieces play a strong role to try to eliminate systems to ensure that those persons have what they need to be successful. Next slide. So we see here our tier two districts here as we serve under the disproportionality piece. And so when we talk about our tier two districts and really being able to ensure that every student has access, and really tier two and tier three, every student has access to high quality education and post-secondary outcomes, specifically those from historically underrepresented and underserved and marginalized groups. Next slide.
Good evening, everyone. I am Chiquita Moore, Chief Officer of Partner Districts, and I will present this part of the budget presentation. The information you have before you is a definition of disproportionality as per DESE information of how they describe disproportionality. And as Dr. Macklin said, disproportionality, it exists when students in a particular racial and or ethnic group, they are more likely to be identified as a student with a disability, a particular disability, placed in more restrictive settings, and are suspended and or expelled from school at a greater rate than students in other ethnic groups. Next slide. Dr. Hulk talked about comprehensive coordinated early intervening services, and this is what we call in short CEIS. This is where we set aside 15% of our federal IDEA funds, and he talked about a $6.1 million budget set aside to support those 11 districts that are identified as disproportionate. And this is where we are required to identify and address those factors that contribute to significant disproportionality. These funds are utilized in districts to support students ages 3 through grade 12, and is to serve not only students with disabilities, but all students within a school district. Next slide. The information you have before you at this time is a snapshot of the disproportionality budget for the 2024 school year. It outlines all 11 districts. The number of students that we serve in those districts help to support how funds were, from an equitable standpoint, allocated to support disproportionality. When you see those numbers highlighted in blue, those dollar amounts, that is additional funding that has been provided to districts to support with tier 3 needs. And Dr. Macklin did express some of those. We want to ensure that as we take a look at districts that we're supporting, we're looking at all 3 categories. Tier 1, what we do for all students. Tier 2, what we do for some students, and that's our disproportionality, in which I'm presenting now. And then tier 3 is where we focus on those high needs districts based upon Distressed Communities Index. And we'll talk a little bit about that more soon. You're also able to see a snapshot of the different types of positions each of these districts are utilizing their funds and have identified through their goal development and planning positions to support addressing disproportionality. Next slide.
So again, when we speak to tier 3, we want to be sure that we use the language which is here, that resources are prioritized based on the greatest needs of the individual, of the student, of the school, and of the student groups, in order to eliminate the opportunity gap and the achievement gap and the gaps that take place as relates to access and opportunity.
I'm sorry, Mr. Macklin, I hate to interrupt. This is Debbie Hopper. My slides are not advancing. Or on
The
my
slides are-
screen, is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. You can't see that slide, is that correct?
I'm still seeing the zero-based budget and focus with tiers 1, 2, and 3 identified.
Okay, let's see if we can
Slide number 12.
go
We've
back.
got the tier 3 districts up currently.
Should I do something?
I'm seeing slide 17.
Is everyone else seeing tier 3 districts? Give me a thumbs up. Thumbs up if you see tier 3 districts. Thumbs up. Great. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Okay. Thumbs up.
Mhm.
Thumbs up. Okay. 2 thumbs up.
It's
Thank you,
me.
Kenny Egger. Thank you. Thank you.
I
Appreciate that.
I had an issue a minute ago. If you swipe left and then swipe back right, it might jump you back to the right page.
Okay.
Debbie, are you working on your own slides too?
I don't think so.
Okay, because it's on there.
So, and the point that
Okay.
the point here that was noted here, Debbie Hopper, was just a piece of really ensuring that when we talk about tier 3, that using the language and understanding the language, that resources are prioritized based on the greatest needs of the schools, the students, and more importantly, the student groups, in order to eliminate the opportunity, as we talked about. Dr. Carter talked about earlier, access, and really being able to eliminate those access to ensure that all have access and opportunity. And so that's how resources are prioritized. Next slide here. So again, when you see the DCI index, and again, we focus on the DCI index because this gives a great budget and a great snapshot just as it relates to really the quartile. And the quartile was created to delve into those pieces to be able to see where school districts serve. Again, this really breaks down against the focus on equity and really delves into the constant terminology, which is often misrepresented of equity and equality, or equity and equal. And so you can see here by the map, really where by the DCI quartile, where these districts stands. Next slide, please.
And so with our tier 3 districts, again, we talked about those distressed community index, those quartiles and the averages across the county. We want to ensure that as we are working with our partner districts, that we establish opportunities to provide additional support, but also highlighted through data. We want to ensure that we're making data-driven decisions, but also listening to the needs of our school communities and school districts. And so instructional audits are necessary. I want to go back to a conversation that Dr. Carter shared with us about space allocation in buildings. And this is one of those opportunities for us to look at just those observations and conducting those walkthroughs. These components should also be included in board updates to each of our partner districts annually from directors, where they're talking about, through the partnership agreement, what does space allocation look like? What is instructional audits? What do they look like? And capturing those pieces to ensure that our efforts are aligned and that we are great partners working collectively with each other. Next slide. Our tier 3 funding is here for you to review as well. We also have connected to this the DISPRO allocation so that you can see, again, 6 of the 8 districts here are identified as disproportionate districts, and you'll see the funds listed, but you'll also see the additional allocation for tier 3. A lot of our districts are utilizing these funds to support in many ways, which includes additional staff, professional development, looking at learning platforms, as well as additional instructional resources. Next slide.
And so for staffing requests at the SSD schools and buildings and programs, we are asking for a social worker at Ackerman based on case minutes to support our students with social emotional learning, an effective practice specialist to help with our instructional staff that are veteran or mentor teachers, And then at Litzinger, we have a 0.5 paraprofessional position that is very difficult to fill. So we're asking that move to a 1.0 position so we can fill that position. Next slide. When we look at related services across St. Louis County, we have numerous positions such as social workers in Parkway, Rockwood, Kirkwood, Webster Groves, Afton. That's to help with logistics, but also to help with case minutes that are decided by an IEP team. A school psychologist to help support the evaluation process in Lindbergh. We have 2 augmentative communication and 2 effective practice, 2 AugCom and 2 computer access to help with the different accommodations and modifications that happen in an IEP. So much for a Velcro to help support students with assistive technology all the way up to the multiple devices that you would have for students to communicate. We have 2 occupational therapists. What that will do is alleviate the loads across the county. We're looking at adding 1 in Central and North. We have effective practice specialists for deaf and hard of hearing to support training and the unique needs that population has. We would like to add an instructional coach and Rittner to help support the ratio of teachers, new teachers that are in that program. And we are asking for a total of 8 behavior analysts. 4 of them would be 10-month, 4 of them would be 12-month, and that's to support our students with autism and then also support our addition of RBTs to our programs. Next slide.
I'm sorry, I was on mute and I was speaking away. In regards to partner districts, we have 22 districts. Of those 22 districts, we have 2 districts that are remaining due to inclement weather where we will sit with them to meet and discuss their budget for this current school year. During those conversations, we're taking a look at what are the true needs. Again, looking at those data sources, looking at instructional programs, looking at district initiatives, and looking at new practices that will take place during the upcoming school year. We wanted to ensure that we focused on student-teacher ratio, adult support minutes, as well as many other data sources. Through those conversations, we were able to identify.
Garrett Meese with Handicap Place. I have a question. I've seen a list here of school districts that are going to be getting, or at least proposed, additional resources. But in the previous conversation we had with the PAC, we've got Hazelwood and Ferguson Florissant that seem to have a high, even though Parkway is part of it as well, those 2 other North County districts seem to be struggling and needing extra support, and they're not on this list for extra support staff.
Thank you for sharing that information, and I'll respond to that question at this time. The information you have before you is a preliminary information. Again, I shared with you that we still have 2 districts that are remaining. We met with 3 districts today due to inclement weather. Those meetings were rescheduled and we are just finalizing those pieces. As we talk about each partner district, including Hazelwood and Ferguson Florissant School District, we are looking at specific data, the number of students that we service in each of those districts, the staff that we support, the students that we support in those districts. We've also taken a look at specific need, again, looking at reforms, looking at if schools are comprehensive, if they're Title I, as identified by the state, if they're turnaround schools, looking at the Distressed Communities Index and looking at those specific needs of underserved and underrepresented school communities, but also looking at specific need for programming at schools. And so we take all of those factors, and that's just a limited list. There are other factors as well that we do reference when we're making these decisions about each of our school districts. And so as you transition to the next slide, you may be able to see some of those districts listed. Again, this is preliminary. We still have many of our districts where we have shared these conversations with them. We have preliminary information, but we have not finalized those pieces. Our final presentation for any positions, as we finalize those conversations, we will, if there is a need, be certain to share that information as quickly as we receive it. Next slide. Again, here are some of those districts. Normandy is listed here. Ferguson Florissant is listed here. Hazelwood School District in reference. Hazelwood did not need to request any additional staffing this year due to the fact that we have really taken a look at the number of positions that they have that are remaining vacant. And right now, if I'm speaking correct, I want to say that there are 8 positions that we are able to look at through this budgeting process in which they do want to reallocate to support the needs of that school community, quite similar to the question that was provided quite just a few moments ago. And so we will be working with them to talk about what does those supports look like in those buildings as they plan for those. But in addition, keeping in mind that Hazelwood is a district that also receives Tier 1 as well as Tier 2 funds. So Hazelwood and Ferguson Florissant School District both are receiving supports from all 3 tiered levels throughout the budget. Next slide.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Philip Boyd, Chief People and Culture Officer for SSD. I have the privilege of being able to talk to you about some SSD staffing requests that will be looking at providing additional support for SSD staff. One of our positions is an Assistant Director of Nursing. We want to bring that online so that we can have better success at recruiting and retaining nurses. Right now, that's one of our critical areas where we need the additional leadership support, but also ongoing training support. We're also going to be bringing online 2 paraprofessional coaches that are part of the larger DESE teacher retention grant. At this time, we've had 1 paraprofessional coach. We want to bring on 2 additional ones to make sure that we are supporting the development and ongoing support of our paraprofessionals. We are also looking at a position for a director of ADA and access. The reason that we would like this position is because the director of ADA would, 1, help us make sure that we are taking care of current employees with disabilities and ensuring that we have a solid plan of recruiting and retaining our employees with disabilities. Additionally, we're looking at onboarding a staff wellness director that will look at the wellness and holistic needs of staff. We know that many of our staff have issues or have suffered all kinds of issues around trauma, PTSD. We want to make sure that we have plans for that and making sure that we have an overall approach to wellness, especially because when we start looking at our injury numbers, we want to make sure that we are making sure people are set for success when they come back to work. Our technology department has identified a need for information security analysts. As you probably have seen in the news over the last couple of years, school districts are one of the top targets for hackers, making sure that trying to ensure that they have access to sensitive information and then trying to basically blackmail districts into turning over that information. We are also looking at a custodial manager who will support the current custodial relationship that we have, and then eventually looking on bringing in the custodial services to SSD. Next slide, please. Additionally, we are looking at another way to support staffing within our Tier 3 districts, looking at providing additional materials, professional development around both the instructional side and also the social emotional learning side. Next slide, please. For our Tier 3 staff incentives, we're also looking at districts that not only are Tier 3, but have also had some of the highest historical vacancy rates for positions. These are our hardest staff areas, and we want to create a system where we are supporting our staff and also providing the right incentive to bring them on board, not only through a training stipend, but also providing additional supports around coaching. We also looking at providing additional pay for new teacher orientation. That is not something that has been a process that really, if you look at the county, we are creating a situation where people are coming into our district without pay for initial orientation. We think that's an equity issue. And also we think that if we want to retain people, we should not create barriers when they're starting with us. We're looking at also making sure that we are providing an incentive so that our administrators are also achieving their doctorates, continuing to grow in their professional careers. And then looking at increased tuition reimbursement funding. The reason we want to do this is not only because we want to make sure that we can fully fund tuition reimbursement, but also look at this differently in terms of providing additional support for those of our professional staff that also have industry certificates and CEUs that should be covered as well. Next slide.
And so as you saw with many of the staffing requests, some of them had asterisks, some of them were still under review. The ones that you saw this evening total 54.5 FTEs, and we are looking at an approximate cost of $4.3 million. We think that number of additional staff will settle right around there. Could be a little higher, could be a little lower. And then total reduction of staff. Right now, we've identified 6 positions, not 6 staff members, to reduce for next year. So as we transition through that, no one will lose their job. That'll either be through attrition or through transfers. Next slide, please. And so as you can see, these are the additions over the last 3 years. So in 2021, we added 50.8 FTEs. In 21-22, we added 54.5. And then last year, 22-23, we added 47 employees. So we had a net increase of 152 over the last 3 years. We think we'll fall right around that 50 to 55 range of employees added at this time. So as you can see, there's a dedication to staffing, as we noted in one of our goals. We'll always continue to do and provide what will make our students successful. Next slide, please.
So we will currently be looking, we have multiple paraprofessional positions that are sitting vacant. And we are required to have registered behavior technicians to help support our students with autism that qualify through the IEP process. So we will be looking at vacant paraprofessional positions to add the registered behavior technicians, or the RBTs. But then we will also make sure that we are hiring for the vacant paraprofessional positions that we have or need for our students. Next slide.
Okay, that wraps up the budget presentation, preliminary budget presentation this evening. What questions might you have for us?
I do have a question. Oh, somebody else. Okay. The question that I have is those RBTs that you want to hire, what sources are you looking at? Because, you know, I have a son with autism, so you know, that's not just a position that you could say, okay, you can come in and do this. So what is the process that you're really using to identify what those individuals need in order to fill that position?
Yes, ma'am. There is a 40-hour training program that we absolutely have our paraprofessionals, because of the sheer numbers and amounts of RBTs that we need in our district. The state of Missouri gave us a 1.5 years to get the required registered behavior technicians appointed in those positions, but there is strict guidelines. And as you noticed in our requests for positions, the behavior analysis actually, or the people that would help support the RBTs and supervise directly, because of the percentage, there's amount of time that the behavior analysis can only allow to supervising an RBT. That's why we're asking for several positions, so they get the direct support that they need.
Thank you.
This is Debbie Hopper, Parkway. On slide 22, for social work, it says logistics. I guess this was specifically with Parkway. What does that mean?
Because the sheer amount of buildings and the sheer amount of students that might support the buildings and the districts, we would ask for logistics. So we would even up the caseloads. When you have to consider about providing supports for students, you also have to consider with our social workers having drive time, breaks, etc. So we want to make sure that we're able to support all of our students in those areas and make sure that we have enough staff to cover the area.
Okay. And then also on slide number 27 about the training stipend, $3,500. Is that per person for training? And what kind of training does this qualify for?
Yes, that would be $3,500 per employee. And also it would include, and we're continuing to build this out, but it would be training that would be not only around equity, cultural competency, but also looking at additional training related to general physical preparedness. A lot of this was driven by the some of the data that is coming back to us about how some staff were not feeling fully prepared, and also looking at the injury rates that we were having in some of our schools as well. So we want to make sure that we are providing the right recruitment and support ongoing. So all of that training would be tied into the completion of additional, the stipend would be tied into additional training that would occur over the course of the year and start in the summer.
And how many employees do you anticipate to be using that?
That staff incentive will cover approximately 1,100 employees.
Thank you.
Hi, Joanne Sodi, U City. Thank you for the report. Are you able to put slide 7 back up? Sorry, I'm a little hoarse. On slide 7, you show a dramatic increase of minutes year over year. Would you talk to us about that?
So a few of some of our related service minutes are what's supporting our students in those areas. So we have a couple of course, we've seen after the COVID and students returning, we have a lot of social emotional learning that's supported in a variety of ways. That's supported through our related service minutes, but that's also supported with social workers or adult support. So those students that are needing actual supports from an adult that would be required in an IEP. So an IEP team would come together, see what kind of supports a student would need in a general education setting, and those minutes would be added.
So you're tying a lot of it to COVID fallout?
It could be because of COVID fallout, but we know that our students are coming to us with a lot of abilities, and we need to make sure that we support those in a variety of areas.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question about the service minutes. Are those minutes for students in the partner districts or in the SSD schools, or a combination?
Ms. Vignette, that is the entire district. That is the minutes overall for all of the minutes, both in the schools and in the partner districts. Yes, ma'am.
Have you seen a difference in an increase in both areas, or one more than the other?
I didn't hear you right at the beginning. I'm sorry.
Have you seen an increase in both settings, or one more than the other?
So we've seen an increase across the board of students both needing adult support and also social emotional learning to help support, yes, both in the schools and also in the partner districts.
Okay, thank you.
This is Debbie Hopper again. Can I ask Mr. Boyd another follow-up question to that stipend number? So I just did a quick calculation. At $3,500 per person, 1,100 people, that's $3,850,000, correct?
That's correct.
And can the budget support that? And how did the $3,500 be arrived at? It seems kind of high, so I'm just wondering about how this is going to be substantiated and affordable.
I think currently the proposed As far as I've been able to ascertain from looking at the budget can absorb that. And that's after discussion with both the CEO and with the superintendent.
So Debbie, with that, Debbie,
Yeah.
again, we're really looking at equity and how do we make sure our hard to fill districts that have had historically hard to fill positions year over year. And we're looking at Normandy, Jennings, Riverview Gardens, Ferg Floor, Hazelwood. And that combination of teachers and paraprofessionals, that's how we're going to support those districts differently. Now, the 3,500 is not just a stipend. It is requiring additional paraprofessional time. So we're actually going to be paying them for additional time that will help support them in their day-to-day work. We believe that this is a part of our investment that we want to make sure we have in those districts, and that we can make sure we have retention of our teachers and that we're able to keep our teachers who are there supporting them so that they are wanting to stay in those districts.
Is this training being conducted in-house or by external sources?
It'll be our experts that we have internally. So we'll be working on TSS, we'll be working on literacy, we'll be working on numeracy, social emotional learning pieces. So it'll be a lot of internal pieces that we'll be working with and it'll probably be after school and might be additional days before school starts too.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? So.
Garrett Meese from Hancock Place. Follow-up question to that. We have these needs in these North County districts, and it's, it is what it is, sadly, but it is what it is. So the question I have is, you showed earlier that we're having a steady decrease in enrollment, which will decrease the funding going forward. There is some increased, revenue that's coming in via the state, collections and things of that nature. But you're putting things in play that are going to be counterintuitive to projected budgets. And I mean, if we're all on the same page, we're all working together, if we need to, I hate to say it, share the burden, we're all part of the same district on this call. We all have our own districts to look at, as individual districts, but as a whole in the SSD, we're here to look after the totality of SSD. And that means that, if there's a burden to be shared, we should share it equally. And if we're allocating extra funds, that we're facing decreased revenue because of enrollment, the two things at some point are going to reach an impasse, and I don't know that that's the right course of action to take, because these districts that need the extra help, they still need the extra help. We have other districts that may be getting more help than they maybe currently need, and maybe we should share that burden across the spectrum, from a true equity standpoint, that we're going to share that burden across all districts, versus trying to prop up one but then hit a brick wall when the bill comes due, when the enrollment is dropped to a point where it's no longer a sustainable scenario. Then it's just going to reach a brick wall at some point. And I don't know that that's, just from a logic numbers standpoint, it sounds problematic that if we're going to, it sounds good in theory, but I don't know if it's going to be a long-term solution to the problem that's really existing here of again, early going back to the kids getting expelled and things like that, a lot of that has to do from a long-term problem of inequality of resources being allocated to the districts who really need those extra resources, that we all should technically be sharing that burden from the SSD standpoint.
Mr. Meese, that's a great question and a good point. However, we receive 70% of our money from local revenue, which is taxes. And so as our enrollment decreases, we'll see a dip in the DESE side of things on the funding formula, but we'll continue to increase, or we'll continue to receive the revenue from the local sources. So we've projected this out for several years, and we feel comfortable in that addition. The other reason we did the addition is a $3,500 as opposed to just increasing a salary is if we do get in those times where it may be a little tight, we can reduce that training stipend along the way. So right now we feel very comfortable that we can implement this with fidelity as we go to provide support for those hard to hire areas. But no, great question. We're heavy on our local taxes, about 70%. So that'll continue to provide that revenue that we need as we go.
So as I look at, see a balanced budget, sorry, Joanne, so to your city, before you account for negotiations, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if there were to be a substantial salary increase or a typical salary increase, we would be a little bit over budget. Is that potentially the case? And what would you propose in that event? Dipping into the fund balance or revising the scenario?
No, I think at this point, we are very strong financially. And so we could dip in, we could deficit spend into that fund balance. If every $5 million is about 1%, since we're right about that $500 million mark. So if we would overexpend by, or if we would deficit spend by $5 million, we're looking at a 1% decrease. If we overspend or deficit spend by 2%, that's about $10 million. We're right now at a place where we can afford to do that. We have strong finances. And so I wouldn't recommend that as a long term, but over the next couple of years, 5 years, you could do that and still be okay financially.
Okay, I don't know what's happening with negotiations all around, but I do know with inflation that we can probably expect to see some fairly decent salary increases happening. So I want to be mindful of that.
Yep, no, very good point. Thank you.
Okay. With no additional questions, Rita, would you put the agenda back up, please? I don't know if can you all hear me?
She's working on it.
Right.
Okay, the agenda is up there.
We're on 7.01.
Yes, it's up.
Veronica, you're muted.
You're muted, Veronica.
Oh, sorry about that. I would like a motion to approve the FY23 budget adjustments.
So moved. Parkway.
May I have a second?
Second, Kenny Edgar Afton.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any abstentions? Mr. Edgar, I saw your hand up. Were you abstaining?
No, I must be delayed. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry. All right. We will now then move to the Special School District Board of Education elections. And I believe we have elections to, let me see. I'm trying to look at this. Okay, so we need to have a motion, recommend a motion to approve. Well, I think we need to discuss this first. Am I
Yeah, we'll interview first.
bingo? That's what I want to say. Okay.
So I'll put the candidates into the
Yes.
waiting room.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me know when they're in.
Okay.
Mhm.
Miss Boykin, have you logged on? Miss Boykin has not logged on.
Okay.
She was a candidate for sub-district 1.
Right. Okay, and I believe that you said that she was out of town, but she was going to make sure that she could log in.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we can proceed with the other two. So for the other two, sub-district 2 and sub-district 3, basically those people are, I guess, incumbents and they are running unopposed. So I'm open for suggestions as to how we would like to do that. Is there still a need to ask them the 3 questions, or do we just want to re-elect them to those positions? I'm open for suggestions.
I'm fine with just, we've had a chance to review their packet and answer the questions to do a motion for those 2 individuals myself.
Okay.
We
Is there
should
any-
let them do their opening statement first.
Okay.
though.
Yes, we can let them do their opening statement, but I was just,
Okay.
for time's sake, since there's only one in their departments. So let's start with sub-district number 2. We could have Dr. Cuneo make his statement.
Oh,
You're muted, Dr. Kuno.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
First time in my life, people could not hear me, I think. All right, thank you. I have been on this board, it seems like for most of my adult life. I started here in, I believe it was 2000. I found that while I'm on a variety of boards, this is one of the boards that I feel gives me the opportunity to make some of the biggest changes in people's lives. I've served as president the last 3 years at special school districts. I would appreciate and would be humbled to be elected again to serve in the capacity as a board member here. And I'd entertain any questions.
Are there any questions for Dr. Cuneo? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Martin, would you like to do a roll call vote?
We need a motion first.
Okay.
I'll make
I
a
move-
motion to re-elect Dr. Kuno. Hancock Place.
To sub-district 2, Kevin Martin second.
All right, a roll call vote, please.
Afton,
Yes.
Bayless,
Yes.
Brentwood,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Bergfloor, yes. Hancock Place,
Yes.
Hazelwood,
Yes.
Jennings, Kirkwood,
Yes.
Ladue,
That's Keisha, and she's excused.
just want to make sure someone
Yeah.
is alternate. Lindbergh,
Yes.
Maplewood Richmond Heights,
Yes.
Melville, Normandy, Normandy. Parkway. Your mic's off, Miss Hopper. Are you a yes? Still can't hear you. Sorry. Unless it's me. I'll come back to Parkway. Pattonville. Pattonville. Rittner.
Yes.
Riverview Gardens.
Yes.
Rockwood.
Yes.
U City.
Yes.
Valley Park. Valley Park. Webster Groves.
Yes.
Parkway, Miss Hopper.
We can't
Yes,
hear you, but yeah.
she's saying yes, thank you. That brings the total to 783,361. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move to, I believe it's sub-district 7. They have one person. We will therefore allow them to make their opening statement.
Let me get him out of the. Mark, it's not letting me pull him out of the waiting room. Can you pull him out?
Dr. Asner,
Yes.
correct? He's with us now.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dr. Asner. Can you hear us?
I sure can. Hi.
Yes, sir. This is an opportunity for you to share your opening statement with us.
1 second.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Good evening, members of the Governing Council. My name is Yuval Asner. I'm a parent in the Rockwood School District, and I have 2 children attending elementary school there, one of whom has an IEP. I'm also a practicing child psychiatrist in the local community, and I've been a serving board member for the past 3 years. And I thought maybe I'd share with you just a little bit of some of my experiences over the last 3 years, because they were certainly not what I was expecting when I applied to join the board of SSD back in December of 2019. At the time I was coming here, sort of feeling like life was in balance and looking to fill the community service bucket and engage in some more community work, as well as to increase my knowledge and familiarity with SSD, since it touches on so much of what I do in my professional life. And I got to attend exactly 1 meeting in person. We didn't use the terms in person back then, but that's what it was. And then the following meeting, we voted to shut the schools down. And so this was really not how I was expecting to start my service on the board. And I'll just say, needless to say, it was a tough time. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that I lost sleep over some of the decisions that we were called upon as board members to make during that time. I think I was the only board member who voted not to close the schools down when we made that first vote, not because I had any disagreement with the other board members' decision there, but because I was extremely concerned about the effects it would have on our students, because I work with so many kids who receive SSD services, and I had an idea of how it might affect them. So in any case, it was a tough time, and a very educational time for me as well. But my entry into SSD and that role as a board member was not what I expected. And so I'll just leave it there, but that was a tough time. And I'm glad to say we got through it. I didn't, as a result, achieve some of the goals that I had set to myself at the start of my term. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to apply for a second term at SSD. So really, I'm happy to answer questions about those goals, but I've been thinking about the things that I want to do differently now that we're back to living a more in-person lifestyle. some of those goals include better liaising with the partner districts. It's something that I have continuously thought throughout this term. I wish I would do that more. And so that's something that I'm intending to actually act on. And also to attend some more of the PAC meetings. The ones that I have attended have been very informative. I have a lot of comments about the ideas that keep getting brought forth in these meetings. And then finally, my last goal is to prepare the district to the changing economy that we're all facing, because I think we need to be working very hard toward that goal. What else can I say? I'm very passionate about SSD. I believe in its mission. I believe that it is something that makes St. Louis really, really unique. And it's a force for good in our community.
It's been 3 minutes, Dr. Asner. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was just going to say that. Thank you so much. Do we have, does anyone have any questions for him at this time? If there are no questions, we can, may I have a motion to, I can't see
Hancock
his
Place,
name.
I'll make the motion to reestablish his tenure.
May I have a second?
Second, Kenny Edgar Afton.
All right. May I have a roll call vote?
Afton,
Yes.
Bayless,
Yes.
Brentwood,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Clayton, thank you. Bergfloor, yes. Hancock Place,
Yes.
Hazelwood,
Yes.
Jennings, Kirkwood,
Yes.
Ladue, Lindbergh,
Yes.
Maple and Richmond Heights.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Melville, Normandy, Parkway.
Yes.
Thank you. Pattonville, Rittner,
Yes.
Riverview Gardens,
Yes.
Rockwood,
Yes.
University City. Thank
Yes.
you. Valley Park, Webster Groves.
Yes.
Motion carries 783,368.
Congratulations.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for everything you're doing here.
All right. We will now move, I believe it's is it sub-district 1, Rita?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Veronica?
Yes.
We have a situation where the person who applied for the position, she was on a cruise and we haven't been able to get a hold of her. So the question is, now that she's applied, but now she was intending to be there, but we don't know if she just can't get access to internet or if there was a failure on that part.
Well, and you all didn't receive any type of call or anything like that from her?
We've been emailing and texting and calling today.
And you received no information back?
No, Rita, you just tried to contact her again.
I did, and I did not get a reply. I know I thought she had emailed Amy and Amy had sent her some information, but I'm not sure if she got a reply or not.
Okay. Well, on this one, I'm going to ask the assistance of all the board members. And the way that I'm going to phrase this question is, how would you handle this if this was a person applying for your direct district? And I'm just open for suggestions. I don't want to necessarily.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Do our procedures outline being present?
Good question.
Off the top of my head, I don't think they do, but I wanted to double check before we move forward.
They do not.
Other than that, I would think in like a typical school board election where we were all elected, you don't have to you can still get voted for if you don't show up for like a forum.
Okay. But she hasn't made any, she would need to answer these questions that we have as a candidate.
Well, but she provided a packet, and I feel like she gave very good detailed answers.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my opinion.
Okay.
I'm open to hearing from everyone.
Okay.
And I think, Jenny, you're right, because there isn't anything in the bylaws that say you have to answer the additional questions.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I would agree.
Okay.
As a candidate. Well, but she provided a packet, and I feel like she gave very good detailed answers. That's just.
Okay. I don't know what that was. Okay. So we will then go to Mr. Curtis Faulkner, who is present for his statement. And then we did have 3 questions to ask him. So I guess we'll go that route. Is that fair with everybody? Do you think that's okay? Or do we just not ask the questions? How do you want to handle this?
I say ask the questions.
Okay.
Yep, he's there. He gets the opportunity to answer the questions. It's
great.
He's here.
Okay. Let's bring
Can you
him
hear
on,
me
Rita.
tomorrow? Can you hear
I can
me
hear
now?
you, but somebody is really sounding really muffled. And I think what's happening, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm hearing a lot of background noise. So if you're not speaking, I really wish that everybody would put themselves on mute, except when you want to speak, because I think that's interfering with some of it. Sounds really mute, Okay. All right. But I can hear you, Debbie. I can hear you now. Okay. All right, Rita, you want to bring him out?
He is with us.
Good evening, Mr. Faulkner.
Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. Fine. We're going to allow you to make an opening statement to us, and then there will be 3 questions that will be asked of you.
Okay.
All right. And I believe you get 3 minutes.
Okay.
All
I
right.
probably won't take it all.
Okay.
First of all, thanks for the opportunity to come before you again as the governing council that, along with us as members currently of the of the SSD school board, we in turn are actively involved in making sure that this organization serves the greater needs of the entire community. When I first got on this board, this will be my 3rd term. We've gone through a lot of changes, and we finally, in my opinion, have been able to get a board of individuals, and we are currently broadening our organization with individuals we're hiring because equity, as you well know, is one of our key intents, and I say key intents. And that came about based upon my first service years here. We now have an equity department. Many of the things that we have listened to and discussed today from the standpoint of disproportionality funds and other kinds of changes and benefits that we are attempting to offer in solidifying our services have been brought about based upon our efforts to obtain equity as best we can, given some of the dynamics that we find ourselves facing. Many of you who do know me know that I have worked tirelessly over the years, both in the Hazelwood School District, as well as in my community here in North County, in many different ways. And I try to keep myself abreast of those things as we evolve as not only a community, but as we evolve as a region, as how we've handled things in the past, what things we've possibly not done correctly, what things we've oversight. And one of the things that I've brought attention to in reference to earlier, you talked about the term historically underserved. And in talking to my equity director, I mentioned to him, what constitutes historical? Is there a time frame that we in turn can look at? Is it 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, 20 years? And so to that point, how do you get there? Is it based upon mistakes, oversights, or are some of these things intentional? And so we have to be very studious in reference to our efforts toward accomplishing equity in our communities. One of the things that I made mention of early on is that I didn't know a Black person in America that didn't suffer from one of two psychological ailments. One was post-traumatic slave syndrome, which is a book that I probably will ask each of the individuals who are working within the equity framework as well as other employees to get. It's written by Dr. Joy DeGray Lowry, and it's forwarded by Randall Robinson. For those of you who have been longtime intellectuals in our community, you know that Randall Robinson is a longtime individual who has had a lot of credibility in reference to civil rights and efforts that we in turn have put forth to try to gain our particular aspects of citizenship. I've brought Joy here. She's done a couple of workshops for me here at Flow Valley in 2008. I also get information and I try to branch myself. I don't know how many of you have seen this. This is the plan for the county affordable housing and homeless services. That has a lot to do with the stability of our tax base. And I look at all kinds of different things, just as though earlier today we looked at our particular take on taxes as far as SSD. I've looked at the same thing in reference to each one of our 5 districts here in North County, so that we can leverage those kinds of things as it pertains to our being underserved, as well as coming up with plans to be able to help ourselves be able to no longer be underserved.
It's
So,
been 3 minutes, Mr. Faulkner.
okay. So, you know, I've been very active, and I believe that we have a great organization of individuals that we formulated. And I look forward to continuing my work in this particular effort with SSD and the education of kids here in North County.
Thank you. And there are 3 questions that were shared with me that I will share with you.
Okay.
I'm going to ask everyone else if we will mute, and I'll ask these questions so there's just no background noise. Question number 1 states, as a board director representing a partner district, how are you or how do you already strengthen the partnership planning process? And for clarification, I guess what they're saying is, how do you make sure the partnership plan is upheld by both districts?
Well, to that, and thanks for the question. I made an attempt to try to reach out to not only administrators that in the districts that I represent in District 1, but as well as board members. Because to me, it takes an entire community to be able to deal with what we're faced with educating our children. And I think that those individuals, and by me being able to constantly keep myself in front of them, ask questions, what kinds of things do they think that we're doing right? What kinds of things do they think that we can do better? Where are certain things that they feel that they can improve upon as well as partnering districts? And I know that, as I said, we have hired individuals that I'm very confident about in the equity department we have. As I said, when we started this, I mentioned no one person can do this and accomplish the goals that we set. So we now have a department which has been recognized around not only the region, but I'm glad to say that my equity director has done TED Talks in Austin, and I understand that we will be co-anchoring or anchoring a conversation of equity coming up in Dallas soon. And so we're being recognized for our efforts, and I encourage those districts that don't have equity individuals to reach out to our staff, because we are well aware that we may have access to knowledge of certain things that others don't have simply because of the lack of affordability. So if that answers your question, it's about making sure that I try to stay in touch with the scenarios that we're dealing with in North County through my district representation.
Thank you. Question number 2. What is your plan for the SSD board to monitor the SSD strategic plan?
Well, the first thing that we find ourselves in is for a strategic plan. When you say strategic, I don't know terminology oftentimes to me is evasive. But to that point, I think we ask a lot of questions, and I know I try to make sure that, again, we do things not from standpoint of in the box. And I oftentimes will bring up subjects that baffle some of my board members and some of the administrators, simply because at my particular age and my experience level, there are things that I have witnessed and seen and been involved in politics as well, that oftentimes are not always recognized by individuals who've not been in this particular battle of gaining equity and equality here in not only this region, but in America. So, strategically, we try to make sure that we hire people who are conscientious about it. And if not, people who we find that we could hopefully make conscientious about our efforts. And I think that we're doing a commendable job at this point. We're not where we need to be. And as you've heard, we've created all kinds of ways to try to stabilize this organization. And I think that's a key factor. Stability is very key in reference to our abilities to accomplish any, to say it, strategic plan that's long term. It's not going to be a overnight fix, and nor should it be a Band-Aid fix. So to that point, I think that my particular representation on this board keeps everybody, I would like to believe, on their toes.
Thank you. The final question is, staffing is a challenge for some school districts. I keep hearing okay, I'm sorry. Staffing is a challenge for some school districts right now. So as a board member, how should the board support attracting and retaining teachers, paras, and related service providers to maintain staffing levels and implementation of services?
Well, as you've heard earlier in presentations, we are doing things that are monetarily, hopefully attractive to people who actually want to now participate in the business of education. I've often said that education, you have the theories and then you have the business. I am of the belief that the business aspects of education now require that we deal with different methodologies. I'm not sure as to how many people are graduating with just degrees in certain fields, how much experience they've had with dealing with people. And so, we in turn have tried to create an environment within our organization. I think people are products of their environment. And I believe that you have to have conscientious people to create the kind of conscientious environments, particularly in the business that we deal with. And as Dr. Carter mentioned earlier, we face situations to where we have had people who've had more degrees than a thermometer, but they've not had people skills. And so I think that one of the things that we emphasize is the development of people skills as well. Like I say, you can put money in a situation, but you can't buy caring. And so therefore, we have to be very conscientious about the people we bring into the organization and their abilities to have a true sense of caring.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was having trouble. I keep hearing a beeping, so I'm just hoping that I'm not allowing him to go over time because I wasn't sure what that was, you guys. So
that was my telephone. Something.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what that was. Okay. All right. I'd like to pose at this time if any additional board members on the governing council have questions for Mr. Faulkner.
I do, Ms. Morrow Real.
Yes.
I sent mine to Keisha, but they didn't make them way to you.
Right.
Mr. Faulkner, what do you see as, give us maybe 2 challenges that you see SSD facing in the coming years, and what might you see as ways to rectify those challenges?
Well, I think that education, period, based upon some of the legislation and some of the policies that we in turn have enacted at the state level, are going to create challenges for all institutions from that standpoint. I think SSD, one of the fortunate things is, particularly because of our tax base being as large as it is, our financial stability gives us the ability at times to be able to look long-term in reference to some of the efforts that we've put forth. I think that we all know that in our state, education is a big challenge. 50% of the kids going to public school in the state of Missouri cannot, and it's been published in several different publications, can't read, do math, and comprehend at grade level. They're doing it at 9th and 10th grade level. So as policies that are being made, and a lot of times politicians who are not involved in the business of education and have absolutely nothing that they can contribute other than attempting to create more conditions. I think that we've got to be more diligent in looking at some of the policies in which we function from that will lend themselves to challenges that, to this point, we can only imagine. We don't know for sure, but I think that rationale and logic shows in some cases that this problem we have in reference to retention, our abilities to actually improve the quality of life in the families, because it's not only the children that we serve, but we affect the quality of life of families. I think that these next couple of years are going to present a challenge for all institutions in education. And I think that some of that we will find will be based upon policies that have just been recently enacted that may not produce what sometimes individuals believe that they would produce. So I don't know if that addresses the particular question you asked, but those challenges are unforeseen, and I don't know that any of us have the ability to have a crystal ball to know exactly what those particular challenges may be. Budget-wise, I think that we're solid for a while, and we're going to look at what technology does in reference to the elimination of jobs, because our current policy is a tax-based policy. And if people are working less, they pay less money in taxes. They have more difficult time in making those particular payments. And so at that point in time, then I would imagine that all the school districts are going to be considering different methodologies here coming in the next couple of years of how they sustain themselves. Cities' tax bases are decreasing. Not only here in St. Louis, but rural tax bases are decreasing. And as a result of that decreased tax base, the state's not going to have as much money to contribute. And so I think that, to me, in the methods that we're currently dealing with, there's going to be some challenges that we will find unforeseen at this point in a couple, 2 or 3 years. And I don't know exactly what those would be. I would hope that we'd be able to deal with them in our discussions as board members and administrators. We have very frank discussions about some of these things, and we try to make sure that we are abreast of them enough to be able to put in place what we can to deal with those immediate needs and hopefully offset some of the future challenges that we anticipate.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Okay, so the way I guess that we'll do this, we can vote, see who cast their vote for, and if I'm wrong, help me out, for Mr. Faulkner, and then we will do Ms. Boykins.
We have to do Ms. Boykin first.
Have to do her
because
first.
Her packet was received first.
All right, then. All right, so may I have a motion? Do I need to do a motion, or just with two of them? Do I need to do a motion and then have those that vote for her, or do I just, because I've never.
I think we need to excuse Mr. Faulkner before we do this.
Okay.
No, we never have in the past. They've been.
I didn't think so either.
I can't remember. I did this before, but I didn't remember if we did or not. Thank you.
Right, and this is my first time first time doing it as well with this. So
I think we
Debbie,
do a motion for Stephanie first.
okay,
and
we'll
if
do a
people
motion and
want
see
to
who
vote
votes for
for
her.
her,
Bingo.
then they would vote yes, and if they want to vote against her, they vote no, and then
Thank
we go to
you.
Mr. Faulkner.
All right, then. So let's have a motion from someone on behalf of Ms. Boykin.
Motion by University City.
Is there a second?
Second, Maplewood Richmond High School.
All right, thank you.
And point of discussion, please.
Yes.
So I believe it says each governing council member gets one vote for each candidate and may only vote in the affirmative for one candidate per sub-district.
Right.
Thank you. Okay.
All right.
Just clarifying.
Yes. Roll call vote, please.
Is everyone clear before I call vote? Again, thank you to you, city. We're voting for one person. So if you vote affirmative here, you cannot vote affirmative the next time.
Okay.
Okay. Afton,
No.
Bayless. Bayless. Brentwood,
No.
Clayton,
No.
Berg Floor, no. Hancock Place.
No.
Hancock, thank you. Hazelwood,
No.
Jennings, Kirkwood,
Yes.
Ladue, Lindbergh,
Yes.
Maple and Richmond Heights,
Yes.
Melville, Normandy, Parkway,
No.
Pattonville, Rittner,
No.
Riverview Gardens,
No.
Rockwood,
No.
University City,
No.
Valley Park, Webster Groves.
Yes.
The yeses are at 140,119. The nos are at 643,249. Motion does not pass.
We will now vote for, may I have a motion? Do we let him come out of this now?
He's still out.
He's still out. Do we let him come in while we vote?
Yeah, I mean, he's
Yes,
in the
thank you.
meeting.
Oh, okay, thank you. All
We
right.
just need a motion though.
Yes. May I have a
I'll
motion?
make a Hancock Place. I'll make a motion for Mr. Faulkner.
Okay, may I have a second?
Hazelwood second.
Roll call vote, please.
Afton,
Yes.
sorry. The vote makes it complicated. Rita, you have all the ones from last time to make sure we don't have people voting twice, right?
Yes.
Okay. Bayless. Brentwood,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Berg Floor, yes. Hancock Place,
Yes.
Hazelwood,
Yes.
Jennings is not here. Kirkwood,
No.
Ladue is not here. Lindbergh,
No.
Maple and Richmond Heights, no.
Abstain.
Melville, Normandy, Parkway,
Yes.
Pattonville, Rittner,
Yes.
Review Gardens,
Yes.
Rockwood,
Yes.
thank you. University City,
Yes.
Valley Park, and Webster Groves.
No.
Motion carries 629,876 votes. Is that
We
correct?
only have 11 yes votes. We need 12 for a quorum.
Okay, you need 12.
12 for a quorum, and we only have 11 yes votes for Mr. Faulkner and 4 for Ms. Boykin.
Okay,
So you can ask a few more questions and re-vote, or you can
Okay.
just re-vote.
Is just to confirm, Webster was a no, Valley Park did not show, correct?
Is there,
Correct.
okay. And is there anyone
Pattonville?
that did not vote at all?
Pattonville,
Nope.
Normandy, Melville, Jennings. No one's here from those districts, correct?
You have one abstention. There's one abstention.
That was Maplewood, Richmond Heights, but
And
they
they
voted
voted for
yes
you.
for Miss Boykin.
Is Bayless here?
Oh, okay, I got you.
Bayless?
Okay, are there anyone that wanted to ask him some additional questions? Maybe or do we want to re-vote? I'm open for whatever the pleasure of the board is.
I would simply go re-vote on both candidates.
All right.
Do we know what the process is, Rita?
Process for re-voting?
Right.
Yeah, we vote until one of the candidates wins or neither of them win. I've got out our,
Yeah, I'm happy to read what I have. Again, I'm sorry I'm hoarse.
I believe there's a cutoff for how many times you can vote for each person.
There is. Here's the language in board docs.
Thanks.
If the selection, and again, sorry I'm hoarse. Does anyone have it who's not hoarse? Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. If the selection process does not declare a successful candidate within the first voting session pursuant to the criteria outlined in section 9 below, which we did, then the governing council will continue to discuss the merits of the candidates and take up to an additional 3 votes if it is believed a candidate may be selected that evening. If, after these additional votes are taken and successful candidate is not determined that evening, then the governing council chair will declare an impasse. The governing council will then take sufficient effort to determine other viable candidates in each of the applicable political subdivisions as soon as practically possible and hold another election at its next regularly scheduled meeting in June.
Okay. Thank you for that. So again, are there any additional questions for Mr. Faulkner? Then I guess we can
I have
take
a
this.
question.
All right.
I have a question. So I reviewed all of the packets and I'm just curious why he chose not to answer the questions on page 2. He did write on the page, so I don't think it was an oversight.
Okay. Mr. Faulkner, did you hear the question?
I believe that that particular vote was about the tax increase.
No, not question 2. On page 2 of the application process, you only answered one question. And it was question number 1. When it was asked why you would like to serve, you just wrote incumbent.
Well, yes, and to that point, my service has been one of a commitment to my community for a number of years. I've been an active participant in the Hazelwood School District and served in various capacities. And I have children who have graduated from the Hazelwood School District and gone on to be fairly successful. My commitment has always been that every child in my community, all 30,542 young Black kids in my community, deserve the same opportunity and the same kind of activism that my 2 had. And so in so much, you know, yes, I'm an incumbent in that situation, and it did take some time to get a chance. The SSD is an enormous organization. And we have, you know, the statement to he who is given much, much is expected. And we've made a lot of efforts toward, as I said, our number one objective is equity. And I've been greatly a part of that over the years. So, you know, when I in turn saw that question, you know, as you can tell, I'm sometimes verbose. So I didn't want to necessarily drag out all of the reasons why I particularly thought that I should be reelected at this point in time. And so that was just my way of stating that, knowing that we would have this particular question and answer period.
Okay. Are there any additional questions?
Garrett Meese from Hancock Place. Not necessarily a full question, but having known Mr. Faulkner for many years now, I can attest to his character and understanding why the question would be why he didn't answer some of the questions that were on the questionnaire. But he is definitively a man of action and likes to make his actions speak for him, and he's very good at that. He's been a very integral part, I believe, of SSD's board for the last several years, and consider him a great friend. And the equity issues that he has brought forth to SSD has, I believe, turned a corner in our communities across the entire region. And I believe he's got a lot more to bring to the table, and has the fortitude to make it happen.
Are there any additional questions or comments? Therefore, can we take a second vote? We will start with Ms. Boykins first. Do we need to have a motion made, or we're just taking the revote?
We're just doing a revote.
Thank you, Rita.
Afton,
No.
Bayless, Brentwood,
No.
Clayton,
No.
Berg Floor, no. Hancock Place,
No.
Hazelwood,
No.
Jennings, Kirkwood,
Yes.
Ladue, Lindbergh,
Yes.
Maplewood and Richmond Heights,
No.
Melville, Normandy, Parkway,
No.
Pattonville, Rittner,
No.
Riverview Gardens,
No.
Rockwood,
No.
University City,
Yes.
Valley Park, Webster Groves.
Yes.
That's 4 for the affirmative.
Okay, we will now do a vote for Mr. Faulkner.
Okay, hold on, let me delete these cells out real quick. Afton,
Yes.
Bayless, Brentwood,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Berg Floor, yes. Hancock Place,
Yes.
Hazelwood,
Yes.
Jennings, Kirkwood,
No.
Ladue, it's not here, Lindbergh,
No.
Maplewood, Richmond Heights,
Yes.
Melville, Normandy, Parkway,
Yes.
Pattonville, Rittner,
Yes.
Riverview Gardens,
Yes.
Rockwood,
Yes.
University City,
No.
Valley Park, Webster Groves.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 for the affirmative.
Okay. Okay, so,
I don't know if this is allowed or not, but could we reschedule the interviews for a time where Ms. Boykin is available? I don't even know if that's a right question to even ask.
Debbie, I think that's a good question.
okay,
I would like to know if she's not here because of unforeseen circumstances, or if it was something that was in her control, but she chose not to.
Rita,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, Rita, you had last contact with her when?
I have not had contact
I
with
mean,
her.
when did Amy have last contact with her?
I think she sent her an email. Let me double check.
I always say is she never indicated she wasn't running. She had contacted us to let us know that she was gonna be on a cruise at this time and was wanting to set up.
No, Amy emailed her, but she has not replied.
Yeah.
Do we know, is this a trip that she had planned before she ran, before she submitted her application?
We
Or
are
did
going to unmute Amy because she is the one that knows. So let me get her on here. Mark, it doesn't let me unmute her. It just lets me ask her to unmute, but she said that won't let her unmute.
Do we know what she's registered as?
She's
I don't see her in the list.
iPhone. She's at the end as iPhone.
Can you enable the chat feature to allow her to respond?
Did she dial in, Rita?
Let me see if she can respond to the chat.
She's texting me currently.
Is she?
She said she clicked the link. Can you send her the phone number to call?
The phone number? Okay.
I've got it here. I'll text it to her.
Joanne, do you want to read that section 8 again? So we can kind of see, it's kind of like that question around that area, don't you think?
I do, and I think we do need to follow our process. If the selection process does not declare a successful candidate within the first voting session pursuant to the criteria outlined in section 9 below, then the governing council will continue to discuss the merits of the candidates and take up to an additional 3 votes if it is believed a candidate may be selected that evening. If after these additional votes are taken and successful candidate is not determined that evening, then the governing council chair will declare an impasse. The governing council will then take sufficient effort to determine other viable candidates in each of the applicable political subdivisions as soon as practicably possible and hold another election at its next regular scheduled meeting in June. So I believe
And
we have
that's what we did in the past.
So we have 2 more rounds of voting, and then if anyone has anything to say about the candidates, I think that could be part of the discussion.
Do we have 2 or 1? We've taken 2 votes, right?
Yes, it says 3 additional.
3 additional, okay.
Total of 4. So Garrett Meese from Hancock Place. I have a question for the folks involved. I mean, if there are, is there something in particular that any of you would be considered changing a vote based on what you do or do not know, or a question you have or have not asked of Mr. Faulkner? If there's a yes, then ask the question and start the conversation there.
I think both candidates have merits, and you saw that I voted for both of them. So I'd like to hear what other people may have to share.
Mhm.
Well, is Mr. Faulkner on?
Yes, I believe he is.
Okay. Both candidates seem very well qualified. I have a huge concern about the other candidate not showing up tonight. Mr. Faulkner has proven his loyalty to the SSD Board of Education. He's a highly regarded individual in the North County area based on the 3 recommendations that seem very strong. He has shown a high level of engagement during the SSD Board of Education meetings. It seems as though he's present at every single one. So my biggest concern is about the other candidate. On her question number 12 is that she wants to be how she plans to connect. She wants to be visible, approachable, and responsive, and strengthen connections, maintaining relationships. But she's not here tonight, and so I have a real concern about that. That if she truly wants to be on the SSD Board of Education, why she's not here now? If she pre-planned this trip a year ago and she couldn't get out of it, that's one thing. But if if it was an intentional, oh, I'm just going to go on a cruise and whatever, then, I'm just a little concerned. So I don't want to make assumptions, but Mr. Faulkner's here, she is not. And that's why I continue to keep voting for him.
And I wanted to state also that it is a concern of mine too, because and she may be in a position where she couldn't call in, but I think that I don't know. I was on a cruise and I was able to, if I had trouble with something, I was able to get a message to someone. So I was concerned about that. But then also, to be fair with Mr. Faulkner, many of you may not know that I am the regional chair for Region 7, which most of our school districts are a part of. And I want to say that on his own, he has been an advocate with MSBA on our behalf, working with some of the officers there and what have you, even lending some of his expertise to other school districts that are not a part of our region. He is an incumbent, and it did not, I'm going to be honest and say, it did not bother me that he did not fill that question out, because I knew that we were going to probably ask questions, and I thought the same thing of her, that she would be able to answer those questions as well. I am one of those people that believe that he has done a great job on there. She did have some excellent credentials, but this is important to me that she has not shown, that she, I don't know. I went on a cruise and I didn't have any problem, Maybe she forgot, I don't know.
I will say this,
No,
I've been on cruises and the reception is horrible.
Mhm.
Wi-Fi doesn't really work very well.
Mhm.
So not speaking for her because I don't know her
Right.
credentials or what she is experiencing, but
Mhm.
I know that when I've been on cruises, I have not been able to get in touch with anyone.
Mhm.
Okay, Amy is on now.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amy Doyle, and I talked to Ms. Boykin last week, and we did email earlier today. So she has had this cruise scheduled since before she ran for our school board, and she did purchase the internet package, and she was planning on getting on Zoom this evening. She was told that she most likely wouldn't be able to get on Zoom, but would try to call in. The cruise told her today that her service on the phone would be sketchy at best, and at worst it would be unavailable.
Okay.
So that's the last I heard from her this afternoon.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Tara Shear with Webster Groves. Is it possible to reschedule the vote when she is available, or do we have to keep going through the process that we're going through?
We should
According to our procedures, you don't have to keep doing it. It's just,
So-
if it is, you would keep doing it if it's believed a candidate would be selected this evening.
And that is why I asked the question I asked before, if there's anybody else, anybody who's had a no vote for Mr. Faulkner, if there was any questions they would need to ask that could sway that vote one way or the other. If they had those questions, they could ask those questions. If they're stuck in their lane, which is fine, we're all human. It's, if there's anything that could be asked that could sway that decision, please ask.
So I just have one question of Amy. This is Lynn. Amy, do you feel is it your impression that she was going to try to attend tonight?
Yeah, it absolutely was. She told me that she was very interested in serving on our school board. When she initially filled out the paperwork, she did not realize that is when her cruise was scheduled. But she has followed up. She even sent me an email this afternoon. So I know she was trying to connect.
Okay. So therefore, thank you, Amy. So therefore, this is what I'll do. I would like to have someone to make a motion that we take a vote to see how to proceed, whether we want to do this as an impasse or if we want to vote a second time. So the first would be to see if we are at an impasse. And then the second would be to see if we want to re-vote again.
I move that we vote again.
Vote again, okay. Is there a second? Okay. All in favor? Is there any opposers?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, well, we've decided to vote again. Let's vote again.
Okay,
Let's start with Ms. Boykin.
I'm gonna start from the bottom this time, work our way up.
Mhm.
Webster Groves,
Yes.
Valley Park, University City,
No.
Rockwood,
I'm gonna really mess up stuff and abstain.
Fairview Gardens,
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, no.
recorded as no. Rittner,
No.
Pattonville, Parkway,
No.
Normandy, Melville, Maplewood Richmond Heights,
Abstain.
Lindbergh,
Abstain.
Ladue, Kirkwood,
Yes.
Jennings, Hazelwood,
No.
Hancock Place,
No.
Eric Flora abstain. Clayton.
Sorry,
Brentwood.
no.
No for Clayton. Brentwood.
Abstain.
Bayless. Afton.
No.
2 in the affirmative, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the negative.
Mr. Faulkner?
Yes.
No, I'm saying, I'm sorry, I'm saying for Mr.
Yep.
Faulkner.
Yes.
For
Webster
Mr.
Groves.
Mm-hmm.
Webster Groves.
No.
Valley Park. University City.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Rockwood.
Abstain.
Riverview Gardens.
Yes.
Rittner.
Yes. Yes.
Pattonville. Parkway.
Yes.
Normandy. Melville. Maple River Richmond Heights.
Abstain.
Lindbergh.
Abstain.
Ladue. Kirkwood.
No.
Jennings. Hazelwood.
Yes.
Hancock Place.
Yes.
Ferg Floor, abstain. Clayton.
Yes.
Brentwood.
Abstain.
Bayless. Afton. Afton.
Yes.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yes.
Yes, Scott
Yes.
Afton is a yes. 8 in the affirmative, 2 in the negative. The rest are abstentions.
So
That
we
means we
have
go
to,
to impasse, I assume.
so, okay, so let's vote for the impasse.
Okay.
I don't think we need to
Real.
vote for one, do we?
No, I think
Otherwise, we have to do one more vote.
Okay.
Either way, we have to do another vote.
Yeah, we have to do another vote or
You do not have to do another vote. It says if it is not believed a candidate will be selected this evening, you can
Seems like
declare an impasse.
It does seem like that's the case, so that's fine. The chair has the right to then call
Okay,
it.
well, I will call it an impasse and we will reschedule for, I believe the date you stated was June when you read the information. Someone read from the
Yes,
the June correct, the meeting. June meeting.
June meeting, okay.
I believe they have to be reapplied for the positions as well. I think that's part of the statute.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
So it reopens, correct, for anyone to apply.
Yes, it does reopen for anybody, yes.
Is there a deadline?
We'll have to put together
have to-
one because we'll have to have
Yeah,
it
we'll have
before
to
the
set-
June, for the June meeting.
Mhm.
Amy, were you saying something?
I was saying something.
Yes, I was going to I received her email from Ms. Boykin, and she said she emailed me a little bit ago, and she said they're about 15 hours outside of Mexico, and there were some connection issues earlier at 6 p.m. that affected her and several other cruisers, and she wants to pass along her apologies for not being able to attend the meeting tonight. And she thanks everyone for your efforts.
Okay. So as it states right now, it looks like this is going to be June. And Rita, you will, if you would, or Amy, I'm not sure who would handle that, let the current candidates know. And I guess you all would set a date for when it would be open for posting.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other comments? I see Lynn, I see your hand up.
Okay, so since Curtis is an incumbent, so what happens to his position come April or whenever? Does he remain on the board?
He should remain on the board until June, the
Okay.
June election.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. That was the question I was writing down to ask because this is all new to me. So, okay.
We will send out the timelines to the governing council.
Okay. Rita, can you put the agenda back on the screen, please? Thank you all, everyone, for voting. Want to make sure we covered everything. Okay. Okay. And I've item 9 is the governing council meeting calendar. So that is Monday, June 5th. And that is the date that I guess this will be updated to show the election as well. And does anyone have any questions? So with the, I do have one question. With the June meeting being we're going to also add election of officers on there. When would you be getting those packets out to us for review? Do you have an idea of when those would come out to the board? Just in case somebody else signs up to run.
For the board elections?
Yes.
Since
you all said they have to reapply.
This time I mailed them 2 weeks before the meeting.
Okay.
Make sure that everybody had enough time to get them.
Right. Okay. I think that'll be substantial timing.
Okay.
Okay. Were there any additional questions?
I would only suggest as an option, since we all have the packets of the current candidates, if there's any additional candidates, that we only receive that information unless additional information is added to future applications. It's just a process, but I know that writing all that information out, rewriting it or whatever may or may not be. It's a lot of wasted paper if we don't need it, kind of thing. That's the only reason I'm saying it, but there may be a reason policy-wise that we have to have it done that way. Does
it have to be paper, or can you just email a PDF?
Email would be great too, personally, but yeah, I get it. Yep.
We generally don't do the email for the election packets because it has the candidate's personal information on it.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Well, since they have to reapply anyway, I think that those two should be allowed to look at their packets or what have you to see if there's any additional information that they want to support it.
Sure.
And if someone else decides that they want to run, then we'll get their information as well. Were there any other questions about the governing council meeting calendar?
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we would then move down to, are there any announcements on behalf of anyone? I'll repeat that. I don't know if everybody was on the call when we first came on, that unfortunately, Keisha Lee from Ladue lost her father this afternoon. Keisha also serves with me on the regional Region 7 MSB Executive Committee. So I did send the information to them as well. We just keep her family up in prayer at this time. I know that was a hard thing. I think her father, his sickness just came on very, very fast. It was, so we just keep her in our prayers. Any other announcements? Okay, then we will go to item number 11, which is adjournment. May I have a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion, Hancock Place.
May I have a second?
Lindbergh.
Second. Okay.
Okay, Lindbergh, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for your patience. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.